Hello, everyone. This is criminal profiler Pat Brown, and there is new, and I'll put quotes around it, evidence. Just because I don't know the validity of the evidence, I don't know that it has been, we haven't had it presented in a way that we can be sure that it's been examined by the proper people to examine it to determine exactly whether this is legitimate or not. So I'm just going to say, the defense says there's new evidence in the Menendez brothers case. They're looking for a chance to get out of prison. All right. Before I get started, just let me ask you to please do like this video, subscribe to the channel, check my playlist for all the cases that I do, and also hit the bell for notifications and keep this educational channel going. All right. Now, okay, what do we have here? We have the boys, the Menendez brothers. We're talking about Lyle and Erik, who killed in 1989 their parents, Jose and Kitty Menendez. All right. This is not, there's no question that the two of them, killed the two of them. That's not in question. They went out and bought shotguns. And then let me read you exactly how they were killed. On the evening of August 20th, 1989, Jose and Kitty were standing in the den of their Beverly Hills mansion when Lyle and Erik entered the den carrying shotguns. Jose was shot 6 times, including a fatal shot in the back of the head. Kitty was shot 10 times in total. Before the fatal shot to her cheek, she was on the ground, slowly crawling and crying. Lyle ran to his car to reload before firing the fatal shot to her face. Okay, then. Quite a brutal crime. It was premeditated and extremely violent. And of course, they tried to get away with it, and they were only 21 and 18 and kind of idiots. So they got caught and they went to prison because there was no question that they shot them to death. Now, the question during the trial way back then was whether they had a good reason to kill them. And the reason brought up back then was that Jose, the dad, was sexually abusing his sons. Supposedly, he started with Lyle and abused him for a couple years, and then it went on to Erik and continued abusing him into his teens. Now, was there proof of this? Well, I'm not going to get into the whole trial and everything. One day I may do an entire video on this case, but I'm just going to talk about were the murders justified, and does this new evidence help justify the murders? All right, so there was some talk back then that Erik had told someone that he was molested. I think Lyle supposedly said something at some point, and the mom was told at some point by somebody, I can't remember all the names of the cousins and all that, and she sort of said, "What? No, she didn't buy it." And so life went on. He eventually left home. Lyle went on to Princeton, and where he failed out of because he didn't do the work and he plagiarized. And Erik went on to be, in his last year of high school, to be quite a tennis champion. And so he had a kind of a good future in tennis. Now, mind you, they're rich as crap. Okay. They were rich kids having pretty much, outside of abuse, possible abuse, lives that many of us would think were fantastic. Pretty much wanted for nothing as far as education and clothing and sports and everything else like that. Vacations they were born with that, silver spoon thing. Now, if you're being sexually abused by your parent, it's not so nice. And no money in the world can make up for that. So they ended up going to prison, and they've been there ever since. But now this letter has appeared. The letter was written to Erik's cousin by Erik, and it seemed to include, now this letter it's claimed that the letter was written in 1988, which is before the murders in 1989. And I'm going to read you one line from it, okay? Erik writes, "If this is a legitimate letter," and the only reason I'm saying this is because I don't know. Some claim that maybe the letter was written after they went to prison, or even recently, but then you'd have to have the proper paper, the proper, pens. You have to make it look old. You know, I don't know if they have the ability to do that. So supposedly his aunt found this letter, which, if it's a true letter, I'm guessing they would think, wow, we should have found that earlier and not like a few decades later. But anyway, this is what Erik writes in it. He writes, "I've been trying to avoid Dad. It's still happening, Andy, but it's worse for me now. Every night I stay up thinking he might come in. I'm afraid. He's crazy. He's warned me 100 times about telling anyone, especially Lyle." Okay, so the rest of the letter has information in it that does seem like it's from that time. So I'm not necessarily thinking this is fake. So let's say it's real. So Dad really was doing something. At least Erik is claiming that. All right. I don't have proof. I don't know that these boys ever had proof that their dad was sexually abusing them. They're claiming this. Now, I'm going to say Lyle, considering what he acted like, I'm going to say the evidence of psychopathy is pretty strong with Lyle. All right. Erik seems to be a follower of Lyle. He's the younger brother. If you had for example, a serial killer duo, but you have cousins like the Hillside Stranglers, you have cousins going out and committing crimes together. You often have a stronger one who is the leader, who is usually the one that's heavily, heavily psychopathic. And then you have the follower who, for whatever reasons, may just think he's got to go along with the program because he wants to be important to the other person. I put Lyle in the leader part, and I put Erik in the follower part. So Lyle is, and in prison they got married, and apparently he was cheating on his the woman he married while he was in prison, with some other woman that he played around with. I'm not sure how that works, but anyway, and Lyle did. I mean, he went out to the car and reloaded his shotgun, came back and shot his mother in the face. Okay, so very, 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 very violent. So now we have this letter. The letter seems to support that maybe that there was some kind of sexual abuse going on. All right. I'm not going to deny that may be true. So the question comes down. I'm going to open this up to people in the comments, and I may step back and just let you all fight it out. I don't usually do this, but it's just an interesting point here. When is it justified that you commit the murder of your own parent or parents? And we have had the whole issue about Gypsy Rose Blanchard, right? She didn't kill her mother personally. She got her creepy boyfriend, who she met online, who had a thing for wanting to kill and have a sex slave. So she hooked up with a creepy dude, and the creepy guy was all in for killing her mother. It's like, oh, cool. I really wanted to do it. So he stabbed her to death, and they both went to prison. A lot of people do not have much sympathy for Gypsy, which is interesting to me because Gypsy, her mother clearly tortured her essentially all her life. She had like a Stockholm syndrome thing where she hated her mother, but she stayed and couldn't figure out how to get out of it. She had all kinds of horrible procedures done to her. This is documented stuff. This isn't even just a claim. Documented that her mother basically abused her all of her life. And by the time she got to be an adult, she had never been to school. And I'm a homeschooler, and I don't have anything against homeschooling. But I'm thinking she's not homeschooling for the benefit of her child. She was homeschooling because it was a control mechanism. So she doesn't know how to escape her mother, who has power of attorney. She tries one time to run away. Her mother finds her, brings her back. She does not know how to get away from this person who has literally been abusing her all her life. So she hooks up with the guy who's willing to do it, and he does it. Was she justified? And a lot of people say, well, there's no reason she couldn't have walked away. She was an adult. Well, she did have reasons she couldn't walk away because her mother had power of attorney. The point, and mother was able to say she was incapable of taking care of herself, so she could go to the authorities and say, no, she's deficient in, her mental status is too deficient to be able to care for herself. And that is very, very powerful. So I believe that she did not know how to get away from her mother and had some legitimate reason. She'd been kept captive for an entire life, captive. If it was a stranger who had done that, we would say that was self-defense. But because it was her mother, we're like, you could just, just leave. I'm not saying she shouldn't have just left and found some way, but she didn't think she had a way, so she had boyfriend off her mother. I have more sympathy for this situation than I do for the Menendez brothers. And let's go back to them, because now the question is, why a lot of people like Gypsy she walked away. Well, what about these guys? These guys were 21 and 18 years old. They had great schooling. They had all the ability in the world, probably just to go out in life and say to their parents, hey, we're done with you. We're going away and we're going to make our own lives. They could have done that, but they didn't. Instead, they went and killed their parents in a very brutal fashion. And they did it themselves. They didn't, get somebody else to do it for them. They did it themselves. And if they had an issue with the dad, what the heck about the mom? Now, I understand that sometimes a mom, she's turning a blind eye. If she actually knew what was going on, you could have a lot of hatred toward her. I just don't know if that's true. But they were also claiming that dad would they were afraid their dad was going to kill them if they told. Well, if you're that worried about being killed because you tell, why don't you just leave home and don't tell? I mean, that's an option. It's an option. If you don't think you can prove dad did anything and you don't want to have him sending hitmen after you, all right, just leave home and say, okay, dad, I'm going to go back to college. I'm going to go play tennis on the circuit. I'm just not going to live at home anymore. Could they have done that? Well, yes, they could have. They might have even continued a relationship enough to be able to suck money off their parents. But they didn't do that. So they decided they had to kill their dad, claiming that they're afraid that dad was about to kill them, which is absolute nonsense. We went in to confront them. We thought we were going to get killed. Oh, get out of here. I mean, the whole story is garbage. So they wanted him dead. They made sure he was dead. But they also brutally killed the mother, who I'm going to say if you just wanted off dad, you could have just shot him down in the driveway as he was leaving, getting into his car, and mom could have survived. But you took her down as well. She didn't commit sexual assault on these two boys. She did not commit a crime unless she knew he was committing a crime. And I see no evidence that that's absolutely true. So she didn't get a trial as aiding and abetting. Her sons decided to kill her. And I'm kind of thinking Lyle was probably the one behind the concept of killing both of them, and his brother went along with it. And I think Lyle probably did all the major shooting. That's my opinion, especially with his mom. So once they're dead, these boys got away with it for a while. They were out having a hell of a good time with all the money. They were partying. They were spending money. They got the money. And the prosecution's case was they weren't killed over sexual abuse. They were killed because they wanted to get the money and not have to deal with them anymore. I can't say that's true or not true. But having them be dead, they did get the money. So are they justified? So now we have this letter. The letter's come out. And the letter does seem to put a little bit more weight in that Erik, at least Erik, maybe not Lyle, because we don't know if actually Lyle was bothered. The claim was he was bothered for a couple years until Erik got his place. And then Erik got abused forever while he went on his merry way. And he wasn't supposed to tell his big brother what was going on. So the letter does, if it's a legitimate letter, does have some support that it seems like it's possible that he was having issues with his dad touching him in some way that was not particularly what he wanted. He didn't say rape. They called it massage. So I'm not sure what actually happened, but I don't hear rape in that. Not that that's okay to do the massage and not the rape. Okay, but so there's some little more evidence in that corner. But did that justify them killing both parents, especially mom? Does that justify it? And could they, being 18 and 21 and being well-bred, and probably they could have had money from some other relative because they were rich as crap. And I say, even walk away and just not bring it up. But what was the purpose of supposedly going back and confronting the parents so that they thought the dad thinks they're going to rat him out and take him down, and therefore he's going to threaten to kill them. I mean, the whole thing is a very shady story. I don't believe it. I don't. Do I believe that he might have been a sexual abuser? It's very possible. But I do not see that they didn't have a way to walk away. And walk away and even have a lot of money and just not spend time in the house with daddy. Should daddy have gone to prison if he actually did that? Well, sure. But could they prove it? Maybe not. So there was, some things aren't worth trying to take somebody down legally because you can't. But the claim that they went and talked to him about the sexual abuse and he was going to kill them, therefore they had to kill him. Oh, and they had to go out and buy the shotguns and come back because apparently their life wasn't threatened at that very moment. So this is very premeditated. They weren't in fear that day, and they had every opportunity to run away, go someplace else, and they didn't take it. So personally, I don't think that the excuse of he may have been sexually abusive toward them justified killing them, especially not mom. They had a way to walk away in spite of maybe he did do something terrible. Gypsy, on the other hand, I don't know that she knew she could find a way to get away from her mother. And she didn't have money. And she didn't have education. And she was small of stature and kind of strange looking. She had all kinds of issues that made it difficult for her to leave home and be successful. And now she actually has done better going to prison and learning a lot there. And now she's married and and very famous because she got media attention. So I'm not saying what Gypsy did was right and that she didn't deserve something, but what these guys did, I'm finding it not very justifiable in spite of what dad might have done. So that's my thoughts on this. So I'm curious, feel free to have at it in the comments and go back and forth on your thoughts on this issue. Should they get a new trial? Should they get out? Were they justified to begin with? Did they have any other options that they could have used and didn't use? So that's my thoughts on that. Again, if you're new to the channel, please do like and subscribe. Also, if you're interested in all the cases I have, sometimes a playlist, you can go through the playlist and look for the cases. But if you have a specific case you wish I would do or wonder if I've already done, just go to the search engine in Google and put in Profiler Pat Brown and whatever case you're interested in. A lot of times I've already done it. I've done lots of cases. I've hundreds of videos, and I do videos from cases from around the world. So even if you're not from the US, I do UK cases, Australia cases, New Zealand cases, Canada cases, South Africa, you name it, I've done it, Japan. So that case might be there. Put it in the Google search engine and check it out. Anyway, thank you for being here, and I'm looking forward to seeing what you have to say. Bye.